Hey, what's up? Tim Cant here, and in this video I'm going to show you how I made an atmospheric drum bass tune with Polyend Tracker Plus and my new pack atmospheric pads. Let's do this. Also, before we get to the full track playback, I'm going to take the opportunity to look at a little bit of the history of trackers in the hardcore, rave, jungle and DnB scene. You can find a playlist of the tunes covered in the video description, where you can also download the project I made, plus a sample pack of the sounds I use. These are in WAV format, so you can use them with the hardware or software of your choice. When making sample-based music, the results are only ever going to be as good as the sounds you used, so the first thing I did on this project was collect a bunch of sounds that I felt worked together and were of a decent quality. You'll notice that there are some empty slots in the instrument list. This is because I imported a load of sounds to start with, so I had a bunch of options when working on the track, and at the end I used the delete unused function to get rid of any sounds that weren't used in the project. So the backbone of this track is a processed aim and break from my library, and I've used Tracker Plus's slice mode to split this into 4 sounds. So we have a kick, a snare, a hi-hat shuffle, and a crash. Nothing too complicated here, I just wanted an Amen with a solid sound that would make a good foundation for a track. Here's the beat I came up with for the Amen. It's pretty straightforward and groovy, as is typical in atmospheric DnB. When making atmospheric DnB, it's crucial to have musical elements that complement the beats texturally and rhythmically. Some pads have a lot of movement, and their playback speed will affect how this interacts with the beat. All the pad sounds in this track come from atmospheric pads, and the main pad I use is Balcony C minor 11, a rich filtered sawtooth chord which has a bit of movement to it. It doesn't feel too static, and I've also used a touch of reverb and delay. I experimented with different keys to play this pad at to hear how it sounded with the Amen. You can see here I went for D. Usually I like to keep as close to F as possible so that the subs sound beefy. D is a bit lower than I'd usually go, but I felt like it was the best choice in this situation. So now I have the beat and the pad, and together these are what drive the mid-range of the track. Even though the pad isn't wildly rhythmic, it does have a movement that kind of grooves with the Amen. I feel that's what is the foundation of the track, the interaction between the texture of the musical element and the rhythm of the beat, so this was a good starting point. Normally I'd add a load of leads or something before adding a bass line, but this time I felt quite confident that the beat and the pad could carry the tune, so I just went straight in and added the 808 bass line. This is a straightforward 808 sub, slightly saturated, with a bit of a clicky start. Atmospheric DnB basslines can be very simple, using as little as 2 or 3 different pitches. Here I'm using 3, pretty straightforward. The positioning of the 808 time-wise is very important, as the part really has to groove with the beat. So once again, I've gone for an approach that emphasises groove over trying to show off and doing something complicated. Here we have a couple of lead sounds. These are just some very simple synth sounds that have a reverb and delay on them, and I've also high-passed these to make them feel a bit lighter in the mix. I programmed a couple of lead lines to work with the other elements. The first is very simple, using just 3 pitches. The second lead line is even simpler, playing just 2 notes. Again, for me, it's using the right timbres rather than trying to be musically complex that works in this context. Next I added another break so that I had something to use in the intro before the Amen comes in, and I wanted this to be something I could layer with the Amen to develop the sound. I went for a funky mule break from my library. This is a break that's used alongside the Amen in a few cool tunes, so I knew it was capable of doing the business. Again, I used slice mode with simple chopping of the kick, snare and hat shuffle. I've used a touch of reverb on this one. Here's how the pattern I made sounds on its own and with the Amen. To develop the music in the track, I added another pad from Atmospheric Pads, Vocal Sweeper, which is just a single note, and I've added some reverb and delay. The part this plays is very simple, just 2 notes, but it complements the other sounds, so that's okay. To help transition between different sections of the track and generally provide ear candy, I've got a bunch of FX. Most, if not all of these, have reverb and delay on them, and really all that's important about these is that they sound nice with the other elements. I also used another pad to aid transitioning between different sections. Display, another minor 11 chord, but this time it's got a low pass filter on it that gradually opens, which gives it an evolving feel that makes it ideal for a transitional effect. Here I use it alongside a riser effect to lead into the drop. In this breakdown, you'll also notice I use what I describe as a tension string sound. I made this sample by running a unison detuned saw oscillator through a reverb, and it gives us a string timbre that's pseudo-realistic, but also fits nicely into this largely synthetic context. To keep things interesting arrangement-wise, I made a B section, and this is based around Populate, another minor 11 chord, again sawtooth based, but this one doesn't sustain, it's more a stab, and it's got a bit of a chilled funky Technicians feel to it. I paired this up with another lead sound, and this one is a fifth that does something a little more complicated, playing a whopping 4 different pitches. So, those are the main sounds in the track. There's some hats and a few more FX sounds, but rather than get into the weeds with those, I wanted to highlight some beat programming tracker tricks I used to keep the track rolling and sounding interesting. First up in the intro, I used volume automation to roll a funky mule break snare in and out, just increasing or decreasing the V parameter, very straightforward. Another little edit I made at the end of some sections was to use the low pass filter to open and close over the Amen crash using the L parameter. About halfway through the track, I get a bit more into the beat processing and have this section where there is some crazy phaser effects. And I created these by having the Amen play on 2 tracks, one of which was detuned slightly using the capital M microtune parameter. This creates a phasing effect that changes over the course of the sound as the tuning of the 2 Amens gets gradually further apart. You could also use the lowercase m micro move parameter to get a more static effect, which is also cool. Playing 2 Amens at once increases the output level considerably, and because I'm using both the slice and microtune parameters, I don't have a spare parameter to turn down the volume level. So I simply made another instrument with the Amen on it and turned down its volume on the instrument parameter page. This helps it sound balanced when used in this section. In this section I also used the J slide down parameter on the crash to provide a little variety at the end of each pattern. So that's the track. Check out chapter 3 of the video to hear it in full. Now, before we play back the full track, I wanted to take a little intermission to chat about trackers and their place in the UK's hardcore rave, jungle and early DnB scene. From my experience, most artists back in the day used a setup that was based around the core elements of an Atari ST running a sequencer like Cubase, triggering a hardware sampler such as an Akai S1000, run through some kind of desk with some outboard FX. This kind of setup might sound humble now, but it would have been very expensive at the time, definitely costing well into the 4 figures even pre-owned. By comparison, an Amiga-based tracker setup could be had for much less, under £500 new. This was more limited than a dedicated hardware-based studio, with a mere 4 channels of crunchy 8-bit sound compared to the 16 voices of CD-quality audio afforded by the Akai, but it gave aspiring musicians who couldn't perhaps afford a full-on studio the chance to make electronic music. So, while a hardware sampler-based setup was the most common studio solution back in the day, many of the early 90s most groundbreaking artists did indeed use Amiga-based trackers. The first tracker-based release I'm aware of is Urban Shakedown featuring Mickey Finn's Some Justice from 1991. A futuristic slice of early jungle, Some Justice features ahead of its time breakbeat choppage, heavy undulating bass lines and a stripped-back sound that nevertheless required 2 Amigas playing in tandem to create, giving Urban Shakedown 8 tracks of audio to play with. Some Justice was re-released in remix form in 1992, making it to number 23 in the UK Top 40, and you can read more about its creation in an interview with Urban Shakedown in the August 1992 issue of Amiga Format, which is linked in the description. Aphrodite from Urban Shakedown went on to make tons more Amiga-based bangers under various pseudonyms, and the 8-bit sound is very much present in his tracks until 1994, where you can hear an increase in fidelity in tracks such as Deep in the Jungle. Another big rave act who used an Amiga was Slammin' Vinyl's DJ Red Alert and Mike Slammer, and you can see them performing a live PA complete with an A600 on stage on the back of their single The Ride. DJ Red Alert and Mike Slammer made some of 1993 and 1994's biggest hardcore anthems, including tracks such as In Effect, Don't Need Your Love and Rougher, and they have unparalleled sample selection and programming chops. Their tracks are very lo-fi sounding, but still the breaks sound banging and full of energy, and the limited sample rates add a nostalgic hazy touch to the musical samples used in the tracks. Foul Play are a legendary early DnB act, and their early releases Volume 1 and 2 on Oblivion Records and Volume 3 on Moving Shadow are Amiga-based productions that really pushed the boundaries of what the platform was capable of. According to legend, their much sought-after track Finest Illusion was created on an Amiga with the vocal a cappella coming straight off a vinyl record, played back in sync with the computer. Another Moving Shadow artist, Omni Trio, is one of drum and bass's most innovative producers, and again his early works have the Amiga sound. If you compare the sound of the Omni Trio Volume 2 Mystic Stepper EP to the sound of Omni Trio Volume 3 Renegade Snares EP, it's clear that he upgraded to a 16-bit sampler in the interim, although he may well have still been sequencing it from an Amiga. Another important jungle label, Busy Bee's Braid Records, was a hotbed of Amiga-based production, with tracks like This One Is Computerized having a lo-fi feel that epitomises the sound of early tracker-based jungle. A true jungle legend, Busy Bee has a YouTube channel where he explores jungle music production, and that's well worth checking out for tracker fans. DJ Zinc also released on Brain, and his all-time jungle anthem Super Sharp Shooter was reportedly made on an Amiga with a tracker, though judging from the high fidelity of the samples in the track, he was using the Amiga to trigger a hardware sampler. A less well-known but equally awesome Amiga-based artist is Baird Assesti's Mole the Dipper, who released some fantastic and imaginative breakbeat bangers back in 1993. His most well-known tracks are probably Ecstatic House and Eye of the Dinosaur, thanks to their inclusion on strictly underground compilations back in the day, but I recommend checking out Immoral Depth for its slamming beats and big, beautiful bass lines. Okay, that's enough history. Let's play out with our track. Remember, you can download the project file or samples in the description. Right, that is enough tracker-based breakbeat action for one video. If you enjoyed what you've seen, please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you real soon.